So today's assignment is to draw a color wheel, and what I'm going to show you how to do is how to lay it out. Our ultimate goal is to have a neat and tidy rendering. It looks like this. And what we're going to do is we're going to make this out of one of these. And you start, oddly enough, with two pieces of paper. We've got two pencils, a Sharpie, two pieces of paper. Optional, you can have a pink pearl eraser, but the eraser on the end of your pencil will do fine if you are conscientious and careful with making your lines very light. You always want to make your lines very light. So we'll start with making our tools, and our tools are super simple. If you have a compass to draw with, good for you, that's great. If you don't have a compass to draw with, this piece of paper will suffice. I'm going to show you how to make a compass using nothing more sophisticated than a piece of copy paper. We start by folding it in half, lengthwise. And you could fold it in half either way, but I'm going to start lengthwise. The first thing I do is I'm going to crease it really sharply. And the reason I'm creasing it really sharply is because I'm going to tear it. I'm not going to use scissors. I don't really need any. I find that copy paper works just fine if I just tear it. And I'm going to use my thumbnail. I don't have a whole lot of thumbnail, but what I do have is plenty sufficient to get the job done. And all I'm going to do is start that little tear there. And there we go. Alright, now I've got two pieces of paper. I'm going to put one aside. I'm not going to throw it away because I have a use for that later. I'm going to put it aside. The second thing I'm going to do is I'm going to fold it in half. Again, this way. Put a nice sharp crease in it. And once I've done that nice sharp crease, start the tear. And there it is. It doesn't have to be perfect, just needs to be pretty close. So what I end up with are two useful tools. I've got a longer piece and a smaller piece, basically 3/4 of a piece of paper. What I'm going to do with this one becomes my important tool. I'm going to push this aside so you can see what's going on here. I'm going to fold this in half lengthwise. One more time. I'm going to put a sharp crease in it. And I want my sharp crease to be really sharp because this becomes an important structural element. And I'm going to fold it again. And this time, I'm not going to worry so much about my crease being super sharp, but I end up with kind of a little house roof kind of shape there, and that's it. That's all of the tool. Now I do have to modify my tool a little bit, and to do that, I use a good sharp pencil. You notice the pencil has got a nice sharp point on it. And I'm going to put my finger on it and make a dot. It's a little bit past the end of my finger, just about the width of my finger. And this is, I got a dot there and a dot there. It's real simple. And what I'm going to do is I'm going to poke a hole through that using this nice sharp pencil. To do that, unfold it one time. Notice I put the crease in between my fingers here so I'm not stabbing into my finger. You may like to stab your finger, I don't know, but that's not my bag. So what I'm going to do, poke my hole. Notice the hole's real simple. If you have to fight it, sharpen your pencil. You shouldn't have to fight it at all. You're just using regular copy paper. And once I've got that hole all the way through there, I'm going to flip it over. And I'm just going to spin my pencil a little bit. I don't want to waller that hole out. It doesn't need to be really big. But it does need to be big enough that my pencil will slide around in it pretty easily. I'm going to pop it over and do the same exact thing here. And once that's done, poke it, flip it, and waller the thing. Now, I'm ready for the hard part. It's really not hard, but we're going to call it the hard part because that's what we do. I do have a piece of tape, a couple pieces of tape. Any tape will do. The key thing to remember is you want your tape to be barely touching the paper, because you don't want to have to fight it to get the tape off there. You know, any tape will do. All you're doing is holding the paper still while you do the next steps. The next steps will involve this pencil and this pencil. And what I'm going to do is I'm going to make a mark. I'm going to guess. Now, I don't have to guess because I've got my tool is exactly half the length of the paper, right? That's convenient. And I'm going to put a little dot there. And I'm going to put another little corresponding dot on the other side of the paper. And what this is going to do is going to help me to find the exact middle of my paper, which is what I want to do. So I'm going to take my, that pencil's not very sharp. Let's sharpen it up. There we go. It doesn't have to be crazy sharp, but it should be sharp. Sounds like the neighbors are restless. Somebody on a Harley. Fun fact, 95% of all the Harleys ever made are still on the road. Yep, it's true. The other 5% actually made it home. Joke. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to line that pencil up right there on that little dot. I'm going to hold it with this hand straight up and down. And with my other hand, I'm going to keep my pencil straight up and down. I'm just going to kind of draw a little arc. And those of you that are very observant will notice that that pencil line there is very faint. I don't want to make, I'm not digging it in. I want it to be very, very light. So I'm going to do the same thing. Put my, we'll call this orange one, I guess it's orange, the darker color one. We're going to call it the pivot pencil and consistent with it. And then I'm going to use my I Love Science pencil. I don't know who gave me this pencil. It just showed up. I'm going to draw another little arc. Now you'll notice my arcs don't meet, and that's good. That means that my tool will be just right for drawing me a circle. But what I do want to do is I'm going to use this half piece. I'm going to fold it in half, just like that. I'm going to use the crease edge. I'm just going to lay it across these two dots. I'm just going to draw a little line. And where I think the middle of those two lines is, I'm going to make another dot. And that's well within tolerances of the middle of this whole piece of paper. And that's all I want. I want to ballpark on where the piece of paper is. And the rest of these lines that I use to help me find that, there's other ways to do it. And in truth, as long as you're pretty close, it's not crucial. It's not, you know, it's not absolutely critical. Now the next step is pretty important. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to put my pivot pencil through one of the holes. And I'm going to put it very carefully. I'm going to look on the underside of my tool here and see that I'm putting my pivot on that circle. And I'm holding my pencil. You can kind of see. I'm holding my pencil up at the top. And I'm going to hold this pencil kind of low. And this job is a lot easier to do if you're standing up. It can be done while seated, but I find that it's very hard because I've got to put my arm pretty much all the way under that. And this circle also, those of you that are observing will notice that it's not very dark, and it doesn't have to be. What's important is that I hold my pencil straight up and down. And the reason it's important to hold my pencil straight up and down is because if you curve, as you spin around the center pivot of your tool, if you angle your pencil, your line will tend to be wobbly. Now, we're not designing, you know, replacement parts and air hatches for the space shuttle here. So it's really not critical that they be absolutely perfect. If you're really observant, you'll see it kind of miss the line there, and it doesn't matter. As long as it's pretty close, that's groovy. That's what we're gonna do. So I'm gonna pick a spot. In this case, I'm gonna put it right here. I'm gonna pick a little dot, and I'm gonna line Now the next parts, you do have to be, they are pretty important to be pretty close. So I'm going to put my pivot on that dot, and what I'm going to do is I'm going to make an arc. I'm going to make that arc across, and you'll notice the arc does pass through my center point, so I'm doing the right thing here, and my points go from that point to that point, and each of these becomes yet another point. And what I'm going to do, I'm going to line my tool up here, right there. Hold my pencil near the top, keeping it vertical. And if I'm accurate, what I will notice is my line goes through the center pivot again, and it goes back to the point that I drew first. I'm going to do that all the way around. And this whole process doesn't take all that long. If it takes you more than a minute or two, then, well, that's okay, but you're probably thinking about it too hard. And I'm just going to put my pencil through the little hole, and bam, there it is. I'll put it through here. Line it up, everybody's where they should be. Look at that. And what I end up making looks kind of like a flower petal. You can see that skipped a little bit. No worries. I'm not going back and forth on this line because it doesn't have to be perfect, and I don't want it to be dark. And the reason I don't want it to be dark is I'm just going to have to erase it. As long as it's close, that's what I want. Now, for those of you that are thinking ahead, you can do this sort of thing, and you can make mandalas, you can do all kinds of interesting drawings with it. But this is just a simple 6-segment division of a circle, and some really fancy geometry that you can show your geometry teacher, and they'll go, ooh, ah, and then carry on and ignore you the rest of the day, I'm sure, because you're smarter than they are, and that makes them really nervous. So I'm going to take my straight edge that I created to find the end there. That's the bell. I guess it's time to do something or go somewhere. I'm just going to make a straight line across, going through my center point and connecting my dots. Really simple. And what that does is it divides my circle into into 6 equal segments. Triangular. They're not triangles, but they're close. 6 triangular, call them pie wedges, call them whatever you want. Now I've got it divided into 6 parts, and the flower petals here are not important at all, but they're there. So the next thing I'm going to do is I'm going to look at my tool, and I'm going to make another dot about the width of my finger from either of the other dots. It doesn't matter really which one. And I'm going to poke my hole. Again, pull it apart and poke the hole, and now I've got it lined up there in between my fingers. And I'm going to flip it over and make sure my hole is nice and wiggled out. I'm going to put my pivot on there, put it back in the center, put my pencil straight up and down. I got a nice circle. Notice it's not perfect, and guess who doesn't care? That would be me. Now I'm going to put my pivot from this hole to that hole. And what I'm going to do is make a line that goes all the way around, again holding my pencils vertical. My pivot pencil I want to hold at the eraser at the very top. Those of you that are observant will notice I kind of missed it there, but straighten it out. And ultimately, this is my goal. And I have now everything I need. I'm not going to do any erasing just yet. First, I'm going to draw my straight lines. My straight lines do not converge in the center. They converge on this center ring. Notice that I'm not using a straight edge. That's because it's just not crucial. It's going to look neat and tidy, but it isn't critical that it's perfect. if you have plenty of spare time and want to make yours perfect using a straight edge, I don't know, knock yourself out. But me, I don't see the need in that. So now I'm going to make that curving line that goes around. And if I miss one of these lines ever so slightly, well, there goes Christmas. Right? Wrong. Nobody cares. We're just gonna... I can make it pretty neat and tidy. All I'm doing is using these pencil lines as a guide. And I find that if I just try and concentrate on one line at a time and not try and do the whole entire thing, it reduces my stress. And I'll just be honest, if you've got room in your life for all kinds of extra stress, you've got more room in your life than I do. So here we go. And look at that. Are they perfect? Nope. Do I care? Nope. Look at that silly mask thing getting in my way. This is a pandemic. We got to be conscious of it, so we're socially distancing. And that's what we're doing. I don't want the Rona, and I hope you don't either. And there it is. That is the entirety of the drawing work. I'm just going to take my pink pearl eraser and that's it. Just erase, erase, erase the lines. This is why I made my lines really light, because I don't want to have to do anything extra. We'll spend 4 hours erasing just to make it neat and tidy. And when it's all said and done, it's going to be plenty tidy. I do got plenty of eraser boogers here on the page, and again, they'll come right off, no big deal. And there's that. And I now have everything I need. A little center pivot point I want to come in. That's okay, I'll clean these up. And there we go. And you have all the segments you need. We'll color these segments. This will be yellow, red, and blue, or blue, red, yellow, whatever. And they'll be ready to color. It's ready to color now. Just clean it up. And I'm ready to do the color sections of my color wheel. There you go. That's your layout for a color wheel.